One day I feel alright. The next I'm looking for the light, for the light, for the light.
This is the Witchy Autumn book tag created by yours truly. We have some prompts here. I would love for you to tag me if you do this. Let me know in the comments down below what books you would choose for these prompts, and make sure to tag me if you do post a video with this tag. I'm so excited. I'm also going to post some templates over on Instagram, so I'll have that linked down below if you are interested. The first prompt we have is spells and incantations. Spells and incantations are often read aloud. What books have you read that make good audiobooks or are written with lyrical or flowery language? I have some obvious ones here, which are Erin Morgenstern's The Starless Sea and The Night Circus. The aesthetics are on point. They read aloud super well in audiobook, and they have really lyrical, beautiful, sophisticated writing that really create an immersive atmosphere. Highly recommend if you love a good immersive read. Switching up genres a little bit here, we have the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. The writing of these is really good. It takes a little bit to get used to. It's a little more, I guess, pretentious, but in a good way. I quickly adapted to the writing style, but it's just super beautiful, super immersive, and it takes a little longer to read, but I think that's a good thing. It causes us to slow down and really grow up with Fitz, and I enjoyed that a lot. The next prompt we have is Witch's Brew. Often an acquired taste, Witch's Brew isn't for everyone. What books have you read that are unique in such a way that the majority of readers may not enjoy them? And what niche or audience did it specifically speak to? Whose cup of tea would it be? The first book I have here is The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This is outside of his normal tone. He's usually more into sci-fi, and this is more, I would say, a comical sci-fi. It's very satirical, and I think I would not go around just recommending this to anyone. The sense of humor is a little particular. I would say college boys would probably really enjoy it. People who are conservative may not enjoy this very much. There's also a pandemic setting. This does take place during the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic. I would hesitate to recommend this to just anyone because of those kind of niche topics. It takes a certain audience. I thought it was absolutely hilarious, personally, but I thought Fart Quest was absolutely hilarious, so that says a lot about my personality. So yeah, I think the audience for this would definitely be like younger adult, maybe in the 20s, and fresh out of university or currently in university, and someone who you think personally would find this topic interesting because it is about kaiju. And I think that takes a specific kind of person. Maybe people who liked Pacific Rim or Jurassic Park, I think, would like this as well. But I wouldn't go recommending this to, you know, my mother-in-law or something. For similar reasons, we have Good Omens by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. In general, Neil Gaiman books are a little bit harder to recommend to the general public because they can get pretty dark and the humor is pretty particular to certain belief styles. I think this book could be potentially offensive to some readers who are not more open to that kind of satire. Because of that, I would be hesitant to recommend this to just anyone without knowing their context on religion. So yeah, but again, a very good book, very funny. I very much enjoyed it, but I wouldn't go recommending it, you know, to grandpa. The next prompt we have is Besom. Used to clean a space with intention and aim, often left by the front door to keep dirty energy away. What books have you unhauled or DNFed this year to keep your shelves and mind clean and energetic? I have a pretty big stack here because I just am doing recently, and it's still quite a bit. I'm only going to do unhauls because I DNF books like crazy. If you know anything about me or you follow me on Goodreads, you would know that. The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman. I'm just not a fan of this book. I tried reading it and I didn't love the narration, I didn't love the messages, and the world building was just kind of problematic to me and I didn't vibe with it, so getting rid of that one. We have The Looking Glass Wars. I read this a long time ago. This is by Frank Bedore. It was fine. I gave it like 3 stars. I didn't think it was bad, but it didn't move me in any way, so I don't need it taking up space on my shelves, and we move house every like 3 to 4 years, so I don't want to carry this around if I didn't feel any kind of way about it, and I'm not going to continue on with the series. Next, we have a controversial one. We have Caraval by Stephanie Garber. I have tried to read this book 4 times, and I it doesn't work for me. Something about the writing style and the plot, I'm just not into it. So I've DNF'd it like 3 times now. Next we have Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. I really did not love the dreary, painful, just suffering of humanity in this book. I DNF'd it because I couldn't handle the heavier topics. It was just too painful to read personally for me, and I wasn't in a place in my life where I could be reading something that was so painful. That's the best way I can put it. I think it's better that I unhaul this so that a queer teen or young adult somewhere in the world can read this and feel seen and heard and relate to it, unfortunately. And I think it's better out in the world than it is with me. Next we have Moon Chosen by PC Cast. It's not that I'm not interested in this book. I started reading it a few times in the past. It's just quite problematic. There's a lot of I guess subtle racism in here, and it's not that subtle. So I've heard that this author's work in particular has been a little problematic in this series, even though the cover is absolutely stunning and the aesthetic is absolutely on point. I don't think I'm going to be able to read it because I can't unsee those problems now. Next we have Red Rising, another controversial one. This is by Pierce Brown. I don't love a story that depends on a woman dying to get the plot moving. It's very patriarchal feeling, and there's a lot of misogyny that's just written into this subconsciously, and I'm not a fan of that. And if you've been around for any length of time, you know I don't tolerate it. And if I can see it in every page, I'm not going to enjoy the book. And I am not going to give it an unfair rating because I know I'm not going to like it. So I DNF'd this book and am unhauling it. Very popular book. I'm sure somebody will be very happy to see it in a bookstore. These Witches Don't Burn by Isabel Sterling. I am unhauling this, but I don't quite know what to do with it yet. This spreads a lot of misinformation about Wicca and paganism and all of that. This is not an accurate representation, and the terms Wicca, pagan, witchcraft are all used incorrectly in this, which is offensive. As a practicing pagan, not a Wiccan, it is quite hurtful to see those terms used interchangeably and incorrectly. Not a fan of this one. Additionally, there was a lot of internalized elitism, I would say, in this book. The main character is insufferable, and I only got a few chapters in before I was like, nope, the concept, excellent. The execution, offensive. Next we have The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. I am still kind of interested in this book, but this is a really disgusting library used book that I bought for like 10 cents. And I realized I'm gonna read this by audiobook if I ever do read it, so I don't need a physical copy. And then we have Splinter by A.G. Howard. I unhauled this because I tried a challenge I'm doing for my physical TBR, and I set this in a TBR and I never read it that month. And honestly, I've had it for 7 years now and I've never read it, so I'm not that interested. Clearly. I don't pick it over other books. We're just going to unhaul it. Somebody will be very happy to get this Alice in Wonderland retelling. It's very pretty. It looks like it's a lot of fun, but I'll just pick up the audiobook. And I don't have a feeling I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5 stars, so I don't need to own it. And now that we've cleared our space with our Besom, let's do potions. Intentionally crafted with ingredients collected and stored with care in order to cure, protect, manifest, and banish. What books make up the ingredients list for a potion to take when you are feeling down or need some cozy content and a warm hug, or simply you're in a slump? This one is easy for me, not just middle grade in general, but specifically witchy middle grade, like the Witchlings, is very comforting to me. I love a good magical middle grade fantasy. And then we have Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. Something is just so cozy about this series and makes me feel seen. It's just something about this feels like home to me, and I don't know what that's about. It's probably the nature setting and the way that this story is told. It's subtly feminist, it's magical, it's got politics, but not like too heavy. It's slower paced. It's home to me. Anything Becky Chambers, they're uplifting, it's hope punk. What else can I say about their books? How many times can I bring it up and you still haven't read it? Get on it. And of course, The Guardians of Gaul. It's comforting, okay? It makes me feel better, and it's a guaranteed way to make me feel better. The next prompt is Coven, a circle of trusted witches who share a bond closer than blood. What books have you read featuring a coven or a found family? Of course, I'm going to bring up Witchlings again because it's all about trusting your coven and these girls working together to become a coven against the odds, so I highly recommend this one. Next, we have The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst. I've read this book 2 times and I loved it both times. The characters are the reason I return to this. The plot is okay. The aesthetic, excellent. High fantasy, necromancer, dark tones, it's everything. But this cast of characters and their found family as like middle-aged adults who have lives that are established, it's everything to me. I love this found family so much and it warms my little dark heart. Next, we have one that is more sisterhood, which is going to be Song of the Forever Rains by E.J. Mello. I love the sisters in this series. I love their coven-like dynamic, but they are still sisters, which I think is fascinating. I love that. I love the sisterly love. I think it's cute. It's not the main point of this book, but it does occur many times throughout this book that these sisters are together, so I think it counts. I'll have to put the cover up here because I don't have the dust jacket, but A Pinch of Magic. This is so good. It's, again, sisters, but they're kind of a coven and there's a little bit of witchcraft going on, so I think it's very on point. Next, we have Witch's Hat. Often pointy and dark in color, except for mine. What books have you read that are edgy, dark, or feature something ancient and mysterious? So for this, I'm going to pick Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. This book is very edgy. There is definitely edgy characters within it. It's very dark, and there is kind of an ancient mystery, but I would say it's more the darkness that I'm going for here. It's edgy. It's got some edge, and I don't think it's for everyone for that reason. Next, we have What We Devour, again, by Lindsay Miller. This is very dark, very edgy, very brooding, and I loved that about it. It's dark in a nightmare kind of way and less in a teenage angst kind of way. That's what I liked about it. There's not really much of any teenage angst. It's true darkness at its purest, and I love that. Next, we have Coraline by Neil Gaiman, and this book is absolutely terrifying. It gives ancient, mysterious vibes for sure, the beldam specifically, but it's also terrifying and dark and brooding. Terrifying, okay? It's just terrifying. The rats, like, read it if you want to be terrified. Next, we have Thornhill, and I won't spoil this one, but I will say check the content warnings for this. Very dark, very edgy, very glum, and hard to read edgy. It's very intense, and the emotions are so heavy, and it's kind of hard to read because of the themes that it tackles in here. Highly recommend if you can handle the content warnings. Next, we have Divination. By tarot, crystal ball, or one of the other mediums of divination, witches often reach beyond the veil in seek of the truth, answers, or purpose. What books have you read with time travel or set in the future? There are a few books that I have left off the list of this because I am worried about spoilers. But first, we have Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. This has some time travel. It's set in the future very far, but it also goes back to the past at some point in the series. It's a fascinating read. I'd highly recommend. Next, we have The Guardians of Gaul, which is not a spoiler here because it's just casually mentioned and it's not a big part of the plot. This takes place when the Owl Kingdom has taken over after humans have died out, and they mention that humans are kind of gone and there's human ruins everywhere. Fascinating, right? And then we have this honker and a beauty, Dune, which takes place in a possible future. This is more space opera, very like dirty fantasy. And yeah, my husband's book, not mine. I did not like Dune very much personally because of the misogyny that's just baked into the plot and the world building. I can't personally get over it, but I have seen the movie and the movie was really good, and this story concept is very unique. So I would say because it's set in the future and if it's interesting to you, you may enjoy this. Next we have the complete Wandla trilogy here. This is a wonderful middle grade sci-fi, which I don't see very often. It's space opera. It has Star Wars vibes, but for middle grade, very good. It takes place in the future after humanity has died out and they are trying to come back, I guess, as a species after aliens have taken over the planet. It doesn't talk a heavy amount about that it's set in the future, but it is technically. The next prompt we have is Black Cat. Often seen in graveyards and chilling the spines of bystanders before a stroke of bad luck, what books have you read that gave you spine-tingling chills and made the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end? For that, I'm going to say The Last Apprentice by Joseph Delaney. Now, she's problematic. Let me just be upfront about that. There are some very outdated values in here. It is very misogynistic and elitist in the wrong way in terms of religion, so do keep that in mind. I do not go recommending this to everyone because of those problems, but I will say I am reading this series kind of slowly and it is terrifying. Trust me, it is creepy, it's horrifying. It definitely gives me the chills while I read it, and I only read it during the day because I'm a wimp. And then I have to mention Coraline once again because it was terrifying. If you thought the movie was scary, you're wrong. This is scary. This is scary. And then I have to mention Thornhill once again because it was just somber and sad, but also terrifying in some ways. It left me definitely laying awake at night thinking about it. And then I want to mention Anya's Ghost. I don't think it's actually scary, but it did leave me feeling very uncomfortable and the twist in the book left me feeling just like anxious, I would say, and I had a hard time sleeping that night thinking about it. Like, it still haunts me to this day. I wasn't actively scared, but it was just very creepy. Next we have Witches Near and Far. Witches vary around the world, but all versions carry a beauty and truth. What books have you read featuring witches of any variety? So I of course have to mention Winterwood because I thought the representation of this witchcraft was pretty fun and nice to read about. It didn't have a problem with me. As a modern witch today, it was not a problem. So if I could enjoy it, I think it was pretty okay. This is by Shea Earnshaw. Very good, a little mystery murder. It's very teen angsty, but the vibes are very cozy and on point. Next, we have Age of Myth. Surprisingly, we have a high fantasy for adults. This is The Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. There's a lot of witchcraft. It's not called witchcraft, but this book covers the very basic foundation of magic as a concept, and it turns it on its head, and I really love the character in here that I'm specifically thinking of. Call her what you will, a witch, a shaman, you know, a seer, whatever she is. Absolutely amazing representation on that note. Much more pagan than Wiccan is what I'll say. Next we have Witchy. This is by Ariel Slamet Rios. I was not a huge fan of this book. I gave it 3 stars, I think. It was fine. This is based on hair magic. Thought it was very interesting and very unique, but I did not feel like it covered any of the story. It like sets up the story and ends, so that's my main issue with this book. And then of course Witchlings, which the whole world is based on witches, so I thought it was really cute and whimsical. It is definitely not authentic to traditional history of witches, but it's a cool twist. It was very fun, and it's a completely fantasy world, so I can overlook that. I loved the take on the world and how everything in the world was witchy. I just loved that. And then we have some books I don't own, which would be The Okay Witch. Very good book, very good representation. Overall, a very fun read, and I'd highly recommend it. And then we have the Witch Boy trilogy. One of my favorite witchy graphic novels ever. So good. I love that it talks about the gender issues in witchcraft. I love how it talks about, you know, the male versus female magic and, you know, what does it mean to be a witch? Who can be a witch is a common theme in this book, and I loved that. The next prompt is Spell of Disguise. What books have you read that have a deceivingly beautiful cover that may not represent how you felt about the content within? Among the Beasts and Briar by Ashley Poston. I mean, look at this edition. A beautiful book, but I ended up DNFing this one during a buddy read because I just thought it was so boring and the plot was really unrealistic. Nothing made any sense, and it was supposed to be fairy tale kind of narration, but it didn't actually feel like a fairy tale, so everything just kind of didn't feel in place for me. Everything was off, and I didn't love the way it was written. It just didn't work. It didn't work for me, and I didn't think it was very good quality, even though I'm keeping this book. It's not on my unhaul list because it's so beautiful that I can't let it go. And then we have a really unfortunate duology here that may not be just 2 books anymore. It may be 3, but I bought the special editions. Wow, you can barely see them because they're so bright. The special editions of The Maiden Ship, because I thought when I bought these books that it was about the woman on the cover, and I thought it was about her magical abilities and her ship. I was wrong. It's about a teenage boy. His thoughts are very problematic. The plot is extremely predictable. The romance is cringe, just so unbelievably cringe. The writing is absolutely awful. I don't even know how these got published personally, and I looked it up. It's because the author owns the publishing company, so that's why. But these editions are so absolutely beautiful that I'm keeping them. And I paid a lot of money for them. I really had high hopes that I was gonna love this because I was under the impression the main character was a different one. Anyways, it was, I guess, my bad for having higher hopes than I should have. I shouldn't have just bought special editions without reading the content first. But these I do not recommend, but they are very beautiful editions. Next we have books that I don't own, like Hitel Magnifique. I did not like this book. I DNF'd it about 50% of the way through. I thought the romance was really cringe. The main character had 0 personality. The story was just a Night Circus knockoff, and it was just an aesthetic. And it was an okay aesthetic. If you would love an atmospheric read, kind of like the Night Circus, but less literary in the language, more elementary writing, you might like this. I need more character. It just wasn't doing it for me. I didn't like Caraval either, and this is kind of compared to Caraval meets Night Circus. And then we have These Violent Delights. I thought the cover was so beautiful, but it was very historical fantasy, and I just was not feeling that vibe. I did know it was historical when I bought it, but I didn't know how historical it would go. I was bored the whole time, and the writing style didn't vibe with me. That's okay. And then we have Girl Serpent Thorn. Look at this cover. Does this cover not scream something that I would own? Yeah. Well, I have a huge problem with this book. One, predictable. Cringe, predictable. I know there's some like queer awakening within this book, and that's great and all, but they use the terms venom and poison completely wrong. Completely wrong. If you just know a single thing about snakes, you would not have written it this way. The author obviously didn't do very much research, and I'm not a fan of that. So I had to DNF it because I'm a snake lover here. I'm a reptile lover. I've always been a reptile lover. I keep reptiles. I have 3 of them right now, and this book was not doing reptiles justice. And then we have The Merciless. I hated this book with a passion. I read the entire thing because I bought the first book because somebody had told me I would love it, and it was horrible. I did not like it. The writing was awful. The story was Mean Girls directly ripped off and made witchy and gruesome for no reason. There was no message, and it was just gory and violent and evil, but the covers are really beautiful, and I want all of the covers. I don't need that in my life. I ended up giving it to a friend who did enjoy the book, so good for them, honestly. To all their own. Just because I don't like something doesn't mean someone else won't. I respect that. Now we're going to the other side of the coin for this prompt, which is old crone. Witches are often depicted as ugly and warty old crones, but those who believe look beneath the surface to see what real beauty lies underneath. What books have you read with unattractive or outdated covers that encase beautiful stories that you think deserve a better cover? I have a few books here. So the first one I'm going to say is very much obviously the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I don't think any of the covers on this series actually represent what this is about. This is good urban fantasy that I think even men would enjoy, and I think these covers are misleading. I definitely picked up this book thinking it was going to be a spicy little werewolf romance. It is not that at all. There is barely any romance at all, if you can even call it romance. This is high quality urban fantasy. I think this deserves a recover. Patricia Briggs needs to fight her publisher because I think this is missing out on a lot of readership because of these covers. They look we need to match the vibe of the book to the cover a little better, please. And then we have Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I don't know if there's better covers out there. I didn't look it up, but the one that I own is one of the first editions, and she needs a glow up, honestly. And I think this book would get a lot more readership if it was taken a little more seriously and given a cover kind of like Trust of the Emerald Sea or something. it needs a recover. Obviously mine is really disgusting, but I've never seen a really good cover for this book so far. If you have any, link them down below because I will repurchase it because this is falling apart. And then last we have some books that I don't own personally, like The Many Deaths of Lila Starr. I read this book and it was really good. It won a Goodreads award. I thought the content was amazing. I just think the cover is not very good and her kneecaps make me feel weird. I definitely think that this book in particular needs a recover. It doesn't cover what the book is actually about. It's more mysterious and dark, and her kneecaps really weird me out. Then we have The Ghost and the Girl. I took the dust jacket off this cover because I just think it's really boring. I just don't think it encases the actual mystery of the book very well. I think this book deserves a cover more akin to Witchlings, something much more cartoony but dark. Like, take this and make it more goth looking, and I think that would do this book a lot more justice and it would have gotten a lot more readership. Next we have The Prydian Chronicles. I have these books. I have a collection edition of this and it's very ugly, and I've seen the individual hardbacks at the library and they're even uglier. So if you've also seen any cover updates for this series, let me know because I think the books were excellent. They just have really outdated covers that don't attract the eye. This concludes our Witchy Autumn book tag. Thank you so much. If you participate, again, don't forget to tag me. Don't forget to check the description for a silly little mystery link. Just go look at what it is. It's pretty funny. Thank you so much. Let me know if I should do a updated second Witchy Autumn book tag or if you have a different request for a different book tag. This was so much fun to make. I love talking about books. Please let me know in the comments down below any books that you would recommend for these prompts. I'm always willing to add things to my list. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and stay kind, siblings, and have a wonderful autumn.